Good evening. Thank you for attending the meeting of the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny. The meeting this evening is taking place with committee members and key officers in attendance in person with appropriate social distancing requirements. Cabinet members and other officers are attending the meeting remotely. This is to reduce the number of people required in. The agenda papers for the meeting are available on the Council's website via the committee information. Voting this evening being way of show of hands reported by Democratic Services Office. Cabinet members are requested to only switch on their microphones when invited to speak to ensure all contributions are clearly audible on the live stream. To proceed and confirm we have quorum, I'll introduce myself and then call each committee member in attendance one by one to introduce themselves. Chair of the meeting, Councillor Louise Harrison. Councillor Follows.
Councillor Matt Follows, Bloxage West.
Councillor Barrett Allen for Bloxage West.
Councillor Gage Evans and Birchall's Leamore.
Councillor Cole for Oldham Central and South.
Councillor Edward Lee for Palser Ward.
Councillor Worrell. Councillor Paul Bott, Darlaston South.
Councillor Whitehouse, Shorty.
Councillor Singh Sohal, Petticoat.
Councillor Adrian Andrew, on the Deputy Leader of the Council and Cabinet Regeneration and person this evening, Chair.
I confirm we have quorum for the meeting. There are also a number of Cabinet members, officers and invited guests in attendance, including members of the Scrutiny Overview Committee. I would be grateful if they could introduce themselves when they are asked to speak. So first of all, we have no apologies.
That's right, Chair. No apologies received this evening.
So no substitutions. Any declarations of interest or party? None received. Minutes of the previous meeting.
Approved.
Okay. In favour? Yeah, those are agreed. So we move on then to our first item, which is the Towns deal. We have Councillor Andrew, who's in the meeting, and we have Philippa Venables.
Chair, if I may introduce this, we've been working for some time on the Towns Fund, and Walsall Borough has been incredibly successful in securing over £40 million, £21.3 million for Bloxwich, and £21.3 million for Walsall Town Centre. The way that the Towns Fund has worked, we didn't bid for it in the first instance. The government allocated several £billion up and down the country to towns that needed the funding for levelling up and building back better. So the Towns Fund actually covers in Bloxwich, it covers Bloxwich East, Bloxwich West, Blyton and Birchall's Leamore, and in Walsall it covers Paddock, Palfrey, Bleck and St Matthews, and a very, very small part of Fees Park Farm, but only a very, very small part. We've been working with the private sector and the public sector over the last few months in order to take some of the themes forward that the government have then agreed to fund. And as I'm sure will be said in more detail, the detailed projects are now being drawn up and the business cases are being done for them. And we've very much engaged with the community and with the different areas in Bloxwich and in Walsall. And the elected members of both areas were involved in briefings when the funds were first coming into the town. There was also quite a bit of success that we received with £750,000 for the Accelerator Fund for both Bloxwich and for Walsall, which was invested very, very quickly as it needed to be in order to achieve some goals, much of which was spent on community. So I'm sure that officers will go into far much detail than I am going to, but obviously I'm sure there's going to be a number of questions on the projects which are very exciting for this town and focused on the economy, on the supply chain, and trying to secure a decent recovery following COVID.
Philippa, did you want to follow up on that?
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Andrews explained the overview really well. Probably just to add, the role of Walsall Council, as prescribed by government, is to act as the lead authority, which is the sort of financial and legal entity of the town deal. So while the town deal board is made up, again, as prescribed by government, by private, public, voluntary sector, the council's got this key role in administering and acting as that entity. But also, as Councillor Andrew has mentioned, Walsall Council as a scheme promoter has been very successful in submitting some of schemes for Walsall into that selection process to secure some money on some schemes alongside our partners that we want to deliver for those regeneration and skills outcomes in the town. Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Yes, Chair. This is a good report for the areas that it's going to affect. A lot of money coming into the area. That's welcome, that is. But I can remember being in this council where £50 million with the New Deal funding went to Blacknell because it was such a deprived area. Right. We've never had any report from the New Deal, the £50 million that was spent, whether it was spent wisely, whether it was a waste of money, and we're going to follow the same path with this money as we did with New Deal. This money needs monitoring, and the outcomes ought to be monitored through the council, not spend £50 million on the New Deal programme, and it's still one of the most deprived areas in the borough.
Do you want me
Anyone come back on that?
I think, Councillor Bott, I mean, I understand what you're saying in terms of comparing this to New Deal, and New Deal was before my time, and I think before this administration actually took over the council in 2000, and the maps had been drawn, and perhaps the right areas weren't put into New Deal, but that's for the history books to tell us about, nothing else. I do tend to agree with some of what you've said in terms of the outcomes, and of course it's now morphed into New Horizons in that particular area of Bloxwich, and I think absolutely, you know, we need to make sure that not only that the money that's coming from the government is spent in the correct fashion, but also that it actually encourages more money to be invested in the town and levers more money into the town. We're talking with different organisations, including the lottery, in terms of trying to lever more money into the town to create more jobs, to support the supply chain and to grow the economy.
Just come back on that, Chair. I agree with everything that Adrian said. I don't criticise the report, but it's got to be an investment for the future, and the investment is education. You get education right, these things will follow.
And there are, sorry, Councillor Bott, there are a number of education projects within this scheme, particularly working with Walsall College and looking at some of the new technologies, particularly around the electric vehicles and things like that. So absolutely, this needs to move on into the future. And I think one of the key things that the government were very keen on, and the feedback that we've had, it has got to be about the economy and economic activity. And not just making something look a bit prettier or anything like that. It's got to be about supporting those jobs, supporting that education, and supporting supply chains. And to be fair, that's very much the direction that we're getting from the advisory board set up for Bloxwich and Walsall, and the main board as well.
Philippa?
Thank you, Chair. It may be helpful if I explain how this briefly, how this money's protected, to answer that very valid concern about is the money going to the right place. in order to trigger the investment, the business cases that Councillor Andrews mentioned, they're split up into 5 categories. The first is the strategic case, and that is looking at the evidence and the case for change and what locally, nationally and regionally is needed in the area. You have to make that case quite strongly. The second is the economic case, where you look at scenarios and what the best return is for your investment and what the risks are. The third is the financial case, looking at obviously how you're going to pay for it. Then there's the commercial case. How do you take that to market and how do you do your transactions to make it a going concern? And the last is the management case. How are you going to deliver it? Who on the ground is going to bring that project forward? So before you move to the next stage, there's been a lot of thinking, a lot of consideration, a lot of checks and balances. And I hope that goes some way to answering your concerns about the safeguarding of the money and it going to the right place. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. What sort of, what exactly will be done in Paddock Ward, and how much money to be spent on what sort of things?
The money isn't being allocated per ward, it's being allocated towards projects and themes. So one of the major themes in both the Bloxwich one and the Walsall one is tackling derelict buildings. And that is going to be a key motivator in what we do across the Bloxwich and the patch. In terms of the accelerator fund, I know that you and your board met on site with some of our officers, CCTV department, and I understand that additional CCTV has been put into Paddock, but it's not allocated per ward. That is not the instruction from government and not how the funds are working. In fact, this wasn't realised until some time into the negotiations. Birchhill and Blakenall are split between both the Bloxwich and the Walsall areas. So obviously, if it was a case of allocating it to it, then it wouldn't work.
Councillor Samra. Andrew?
I have. Thank you, Chair. My question is on 3.4 of the report, where we're talking about levelling up with the capital projects. I mean, can we have an update on that? I mean, where are we in timescales, where we will obviously have further announcement from the government on that? Maybe Philippa could answer that. That's my first question. Philippa?
Councillor Samara, I'm afraid I don't have any information about whether the next round of levelling up is coming. I don't know if Councillor Andrew does, but government haven't yet let us know.
Okay. Councillor Andrew, do you know the answer to that?
We don't know when the next round. We don't know when the next round's coming. The first round, Walsall didn't have, as a number of the Black Country authorities didn't, as we've seen in the press. Walsall didn't have any oven-ready projects for the Levelling Up Fund, and of course we were concentrating on the Towns Fund and the Future High Streets Fund. I mean, the Future High Streets Fund, we've got another £11 million coming into Walsall Town Centre. I will say that with the Levelling Up Fund, I have given a direction that one of those things that will be supported through the Levelling Up will be the Willenhall Master Plan to bring all those acres and acres of derelict land back into use in Willenhall.
Okay, if I may continue then, sorry, to both of you. So 3.7 on administration. So the government has government guidance is that there should be a board set up, a town deal board, to obviously look after this money. Can I just ask, and I'd like to ask, because it says here that the board obviously should operate, I quote on the report, in a transparent and objective way, in the benefit of the town it represents. So me, as an elected member, I don't know who's on the board, other than on the odd occasion I've heard about this board. So I'd like to know who the members are. It also, further down in the report, it says of how it should be, how the representation on this board should come about. Have we actually done this? Have we got community, local, voluntary community groups, etc. on this? And who is the, and it also says further down the report, that there should be an accountable body, which obviously will be the local authority. So how are we then ensuring that the administration of this board and the set of this board is to government guidance, please, one of you?
I'm happy to take that. Well, initially, there's sorry, Councillor Andrew.
No, fine, Philip.
As the report mentions, the government have prescribed how this is to be run, and there is a page on the Walsall Council website with links to details of the Town Deal Board. So membership and meetings are set out there, I believe, and they're run very much in accordance with how every other Town Deal Board is run, and have the terms of reference that government have signed off on. And they're supported by the advisory boards, again, as prescribed by government. And at each stage of this administration, the papers, etc., are submitted to government for checking and agreement. The heads of terms, the town investment plan, all of the key documents are liaised on what was Ministry of Homes, Local Government, and now is Department for Levelling Up Homes and Communities. So those are the checks and balances, and that's where it sits within Walsall administration.
Right, sorry, Philippa. Okay, that's fine. And what about the membership? Because obviously, you know, there's all sorts of, as the report outlines, private sector chair, all tiers of local government for the geography of the town. That's an interesting one. So how is that represented on the board?
Well, the way that we undertook that is we haven't just got a Town Deal Board, we've got 2 advisory boards, one that covers Bloxwich and one that covers Walsall. The community and voluntary sector are represented on those advisory boards and the main board. And I think, as Philippa has said, everything that the government and the civil servants have asked us to do has been signed off and has been established. The cabinet reports that established the town board are a number of years old now, and the membership, I'm pretty confident, was published in those cabinet reports, because the Town Deal Board meetings are public meetings, unless, as with council meetings, there are commercially confidential things to discuss. If Councillor Samra wants a list of wants copies of the minutes, of the list of members of all 3 of these boards, then I'm sure we'd be happy to provide those. It's not a secret.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. And just one last point. So you mentioned obviously the wards that are obviously sort of connect with this. What about the wards that don't? For example, I represent Streatley. My residents still use Walsall Town Centre and Bloxwich. So, and this money obviously will be used for these projects. How are we to be duly kept informed and have regular updates? And do we obviously also mechanisms for us to obviously to you know, maybe 1 member per ward to go on these advisory boards, to even if we're just there as just sitting as a non-voting member, just so we know that obviously we're constantly updated to where we are with what stage and how we're progressing.
If we follow that train of thought, the whole 16 members of the council might as well sit as the advisory board for Walsall. If there is a specific interest in particular projects, then I'm sure that we can update members as and when they are interested. In my experience, I normally find that when there's something to be spent in Bloxwich, I tend to find that people in Mullinall aren't as interested as those people who represent Bloxwich and the people who are in Bloxwich. So there are ways and means. Scrutiny, this process, it's coming to this board. Cabinet reports are regularly taken with updates, and as I've said, you can quite easily watch the Town Deal Board when they take place, because they are public meetings. The membership and the geography very much set down by the government, and you will see when you do have the list of people who are members of the board that we've got some serious people who have got a vested interest in this town and this borough, driving this forward for the regeneration and economy of the borough.
One final question, Chair, there. So where are we in stages? So, the board will sign off each stage. Are we stage 2? Or where are we exactly with this, the funds here?
As has been said by myself and the officers, we are at the business case stage, where the business cases are being done with the project champions, and that project champion isn't necessarily an individual, it can be an organisation, for example, the college, and the business cases are being put together, and once those business cases are done, will be presented to the Towns Board, and then we'll go up to government for sign off, is my understanding. Is that right, Philippa?
That's correct. Yes, sorry. Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Follow.
I think most of my questions have been addressed there, but just to ask, when can members of the public expect to begin to see outcomes to the projects in Bloxbridge and Walsall?
I think that will be down to government and government ministers as to when they actually sign off the business cases and the civil servants, in order for us to press the button and make things happen.
Councillor Warren.
Thank you. Okay, I'll refer members to page 17 of the report, the table. Active travel and connectivity. I'd just like to thank all concerned for the projects that are proposed for the Worley and Essington and Rushall canals, which are to improve the towpath surfaces to what is called urban standard. In other words, basically tarmac with pea gravel. That's going to be between Beechdale and Sneed, and it's going to be from Goscott up to Lower Farm, and it's going to be, I think, from Sutton Road, Paddock Ward, down to Wolstead Road, Bell Bridge. Now, the reason that's important is because that will connect onto existing well-surfaced canals, and that does take us a long way towards getting good quality surfaces for walkers and cyclists, and all the connectivity that can provide. And I want to say, Adrian, I'm sure you would agree with this, I think that actually that is a starting point for actually filling in further gaps as and when funding becomes available, because there is a whole, I've got a thing about canals because we've got a marvellous heritage, but we don't make the most of it. And I think that in the fullness of time, with the will to do it and the funding, then we can create a fantastic, high quality, accessible black country network, and into Birmingham. So I really welcome that. I know it's not possible to say a timescale, so I'm not really asking. I'm just sort of saying, great projects. Thank you very much. The other one I wanted to ask about was same page, the Town Centre Performing Arts venue, which identifies that this 1,000-seat performing arts and cultural space will be in the High Street in Walsall, replacing an outdated one somewhere else. I think I know where you mean, but could you explain where we're talking about?
I'll start on the canals. When we initially had the consultants on board, there was a lot of pressure to invest in the canal network, and initially most of it, if not all of the accelerator fund was allocated, which I personally didn't feel was an appropriate use of the resources at the time, because people needed to see some delivery and some projects across the piece, and not just in one area, and also the delivery timescales. But one of the key things, and this was, as you know, Councillor Worrell, we discussed this at the Transport for West Midlands the other day, canal towpaths. One of the key things in this country is canal towpaths are only really accessible 6 months of the year, because after 4 o'clock in the winter, you wouldn't go on a canal towpath unless it was safe and secure and properly lit. and obviously lighting canal towpaths in itself can cause some problems, and we are in very, very close contact with the Canal and Rivers Trust, who are part of the Thames Fund as well, because obviously, and I think what people probably don't understand is the linkages between some of our major employment sites and the canal. So, for example, Phoenix 10 has got a canal that runs right through it, and that will from the town centre, which is a better link for walkers, for cyclists, in order to access jobs. And that's the key thing, is not only using the canal network for leisure, but accessing the jobs that are along that canal network. And you can actually get right away from Bloxwich right through to Phoenix 10 and vice versa, and some of the employment sites in Bloxwich. And Councillor Worrell, you know much about canals than I do, so I'm preaching to the converted. In terms of the town centre performing arts venue, I can't say where the new one will go, because that hasn't been decided. We're just starting to talk about it in terms of where it will go. But I think one of the driving factors behind that is getting activities in the town centre that aren't just based on retail, and making the town centre a destination for leisure activities that should then lead on to other leisure activities. The fact that we have the opportunity, because Walsall is a bit of a blank canvas, to build a performance venue such as this. It's not fully funded through the Towns Fund, and that was my point earlier about getting more private sector money and public sector money into the town by using the Towns Fund to lever that in. That will be, I am sure, one of the most closely looked at projects for lots of different reasons. Lots of excitement around it, but I'm sure from some quarters, lots of criticism and suspicion. But as soon as we have got more details on that, I will be happy to share with elected members.
Councillor Jevons.
Thank you. I want to make some comments on this, which are largely positive. But and no offence to Councillor Samra, but I'm a little confused because I've just been looking at the membership and the portfolio holders that should be here, and Councillor Samra isn't on that. So what capacity? Apologies, Councillor Samra, if I'm out of turn here, but what capacity is Councillor Samra here as?
It's from the Scrutiny Overview Committee. I did say
okay,
in the speech
apologies,
at the
I
beginning
missed
that
that.
they're here.
I'm obviously not quite tuned in. I'm sorry, apologies for that. Right, it's a good report. It makes really interesting, in fact, exciting reading, actually. Whilst we are different political colours, I think regenerationally we are not far apart, are we? When I was deputy leader, we had some close conversations at times. And I like the fact that we've actually got projects there. I think with a new deal, it was money then projects, where this is projects followed by money. And I think that's the main difference. I always said that one of the things Walsall had to do was capitalise on its connectivity, not just with other places outside through transport, but internally as well. So I think cycle routes, walking, canals makes a lot of sense to me, what you're saying. And that's got to be leveraged to create jobs. I think it's not just after COVID. I mean, for me, and obviously this is where I get mildly political, it's after a number of years of austerity. You may disagree, but Walsall, I think we both recognise, is in a weaker position in terms of what people actually earn overall. So it needed some sort of injection to get it going, and I think this is what it's doing. I'm glad that people recognise that digital connectivity is important, and training our people in that also. And that construction skills, that was mentioned so many times when I was in the position, that we should be able to capitalise on that, and it's great that we're going to do that. But one of the things I always said as well to officers, because I'd seen it elsewhere, was that you go over the places and they capitalise, they've got a cultural capital. And saying that, there's people on Facebook probably who are already sharpening the keyboard. Walsall, a cultural capital. capital, you know, but we've got to create something there to create interest, to bring people in. You know, people go on about Walsall having nothing, and then, well, yeah, you've got to invest to get that, you know. And I think that the performance space is a really good thing to do. I looked at, and it was some years ago, I happened to be on the real seafront on a bank holiday, but they've got an outdoor performance space. They've got a cycle route, they've got walking routes along the front, and it brought people into that zone where you want people to buy things, to stop and eat, to trade. That's the way to create a buzz about a town, it seems to me, and I think that's what this can do. So yeah, pretty excited. I mean, as well as looking at electric vehicle and technologies, we've had motions on that at council, so it's pretty inclusive. So yeah, I welcome the report. I think it's a exciting thing to be involved with. I've been involved in some of these projects myself, trying to get them shovel ready. And the thing with regeneration is it don't happen overnight. I know a lot of people think it does, it doesn't. And this is the culmination of work from a lot of officers over a number of years, and it's great that we've got the money to actually do it. So I'm not going to knock that back at all. You just got to welcome that. Of course, I'm going to end by saying that you know, you can only improve the town centre if you own bits of it. So we bought a bit of it. The Sadler's Centre, and it allows us to regenerate that. You will disagree with that, I know. But you can't knock this as a project. I actually think it's really exciting. I welcome it. I really do. Because you're right, Walsall is a blank canvas. And I know that when you look at things like Facebook, Walsall people are very good at being down on Walsall. And certainly we had a press report recently, Walsall's not the best of places to live. That comes out every year. The handle crank that one out every year, the press, because they're a bit lazy. But you know what? Walsall's a place with a lot of bloody potential as well. It is. So let's be proud of it, actually. And whilst this is coming from a government that's not my colour, I will welcome this, actually. And I hope that it does what we intend it to do. I think that because the projects are following the money, so you're preceding the money rather than the other way around, that it will do what we want it to do, but it don't happen overnight, this stuff. And we want a continuing journey. So yeah, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jevons. Did you want to come back? Sorry. Okay.
Thank you very much for those very positive comments. It's and you're right about that cross party over the years. I mean, I saw a little post of yours, Dad, and when you put it up about Phoenix 10. When we started Phoenix 10, I didn't have any grey hairs. I mean, you know, and that's how long that's been going on. Advantage West Midlands was still around in the Urban Regeneration Company, and we've had a lot of false starts on that. A lot of false starts. And I remember going down to lobby one of the housing ministers about 2010 or something like that, just to explain to them what contaminated land means in the Black Country, and some of the civil servants just didn't get it at the time. But now, fantastic, we're starting and it's moving forward. But you make the point about the Construction Skills Academy. I think one of the things there that's going to be key, the modern methods of construction as well, and some of the focus around the retrofitting. So I really do think that there's a huge amount of jobs that can be created through that. You know, in terms of tackling fuel poverty and reducing people's fuel bills and that. But you know, that needs to be done on existing houses, not just new ones that are being built. Similarly with the electric vehicle. Because we've had such a good meeting, Councillor Jevons, I'm not going to mention the Sadler's Centre, so I'll leave it there.
Philippa with the hands raised.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to mention a little bit of information which might be helpful after Councillor Jevons' comments regarding culture being a real unlocker and supporter of regeneration. It's really good news that the Arts Council England have named Walsall as a priority place. And that's led to some very positive discussions. We look forward to involving them very much in the town deal, and also speaking to the Combined Authority about a cultural action zone. and we're just really working towards using that as leverage to really have that catalytic effect. You can see hopefully that we're reaching the critical mass of regeneration in certain focus areas of the town, and as Councillor Jones has pointed out, culture is a really good lever for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, my question is around sort of the commercial side of things. So there's a lot of businesses that are closing, especially due to COVID as well, with the town centre. So what are we doing to encourage other businesses to kind of invest in Walsall Town Centre and actually be set up here?
As part of the Towns Fund, that would be part of the projects in terms of, you know, bringing businesses in. Interestingly, the Towns Fund itself, it was very, very difficult for private sector businesses to apply for any money, because because of the timescales, and secondly because they were still operating under the EU state aid rules. So, and the way that you make the encourage businesses to come into town is to make it a better place to be and get the shoppers in. It's a bit of a chicken and egg. Now, when we took control of this administration, one of our first priorities was cleaning the town and making it safer. We were getting there. You know, the whole of the town had been. I said at the time, there's no point regenerating the town unless people are coming to it. It is that chicken and egg scenario. So we've invested in digitalising CCTV in the town, investment in tackling some of the rodent issues, both prime ones and others, in order to create that environment to encourage people to come into town. But then, of course, high streets were struggling anyway, but COVID hit and just took the wind out of everybody's sails. So we are essentially starting again. We had obviously Marks and Spencers that moved out and created a huge unit empty, but we have got the good investment coming in. We have got things happening. Aldi are moving on to Crown Wharf, announcement of the bowling alley up on Crown Wharf as well. So there is interest and there is people wanting to come. And I think one of the key things that Councillor Jevons said, as Walsall people, we've got to stop talking our borough down, talking our town down, and that starts with the 58 elected members that we've still got around this chamber, actually starting to talk this town up and actually be proud of it. And then when we start doing that, others will follow. I mean, some of the things that are coming through with the work that we're doing with the Lord Way is using the hippo as a bit of a Walsall icon. So I don't know whether anybody recalls some years ago in Birmingham, they did a big festival with owls and a track around the city, got people interested, got people into Birmingham for a different reason. But we're looking at doing that with the hippo, because that's something that represents the borough. Everybody used to make it the hippo. I don't remember. But anyway, I'm from Willenhall, having said that. And it's doing those different kind of things and bringing those, you know, we had the market that we had through the Welcome Back Fund. We had the market, the European market, and that was unbelievable. Anybody who didn't go to that, you mean absolutely unbelievable buzz centre. And we've been talking to them about doing that on a more regular basis. Not on a regular basis so much that it gets boring so people don't come. And it's about having those different offers, not only as a retail space, because as I said earlier, we've got to get people into town for other things, not just retail.
Just want to follow up on that. Yeah, you are right. We do, you know, especially using sort of the local trade as well to encourage them to come in the market and help and support. And I think that's a really good way to kind of go forward. Could you just talk a little bit about the Digital Skills Hub, what that entails and what does that look like for the residents?
I need some digital training myself, I think. I think that the digital skills stuff that's happening and being planned for Walsall Town is incredibly exciting, but also for anything like it at all. And actually, some of the reports that have been done in terms of connectivity around the Bloxwich area, it's very weak in Bloxwich, the connectivity, and people actually accessing online services. And what it will look like, there'll be more details when the business cases are all together. I think that's a Walsall College led scheme. As soon as those details come in, then we'll certainly be sharing.
Thank you, Chair. I think most of my questions are answered. There's one concern which is there's not many shops. There's nothing in Walsall town to buy for gents. I struggle to get trousers, shoes in Walsall. I have to go to Birmingham or Tamworth. Because if there are no brands left in the town, who's going to come to Walsall town? And how can we help to bring the big names to the town?
Well, bringing big names to the town, that's demand and supply, and that's the economy, and trying to get people to actually take notice of the town. I mean, it was our administration that managed to get Primark to come into the town, and okay, that might not be top brands and all the rest of it, but that is what the people of Walsall wanted, and it's incredibly popular. And it comes to what I said to Councillor Cole. We've got to change the town. We've got to encourage people and get people into the town centre, because if businesses and chains and nationals see a vibrant town centre and a different way of doing things, then they will come. If the people are there, they will come. And it is very much the chicken and egg scenario. They won't just come because we ask them.
Councillor Bob.
Yes, Chair. This report, there's one part of this report that deals with carbon emission. I think it's a fantastic centre that you're going to build in an advanced electric vehicle technology centre. It's the future, this technology centre. It's electric cars. I've just ordered an electric car. Right, so I'm going to be part of that revolution with electric cars. What it does, it creates jobs as well for the kids of this borough. And also, will we be looking for sponsorship through motor manufacturers with this centre?
Yeah, and the college have got quite a few connections and partnerships with the automotive industry. And obviously, we know we are the heart of the automotive industry, and that move to electric vehicles to clean the environment up and to stop pollution has got to be a way forward. I'm putting some infrastructure in at my own house in terms of not buying one just yet, I've got to be honest. But for the future, just in case I do purchase an electric vehicle in the future, and not necessarily sort of our generations, but the next generations, they ain't gonna have a chance, their choice. It's going to be electric vehicle.
Mr. Jevons.
Yeah, thanks very much. I wanted to touch on something that Councillor Salhal was talking about there, but let me have a look. You were talking about, on here there's a section, I've just lost it. Urban regeneration, planning and land use. Now, I mean, our town centres essentially, and I hope you would agree, we've got to reimagine them really, because people say again on things like Facebook and next door, well, if there were decent shops, I'd come. Walsall's in a very competitive market. We're next to Birmingham, which is a destination. We're next to the new place in Cannock, which is a destination. We're competing also with places like Wolverhampton, da-di-da-di-da. Okay. One of the ways to get people into the town centre is to have them living there in the darn first place. And I know that we both have looked at living space in the town centre. Is that going to be covered by that, what I just mentioned, urban regeneration plan, or is that not in this plan? Is that something different? Because to me, the town centre seems, I mean, it's developed the way it's developed, but it seems a bit disparate. So we've got the Great Crown Wharf end, and then we've got the Primark you put in, yeah, and that's great because it's always full. But there seems to be a limit of commercial viability not far past Primark in that people just don't want to walk up the hill anymore. And are we looking at that, and are we looking at the change in that part of town to be more residential?
I think it's essential that we encourage more residential development in the town centre. And you know, on a project by the art gallery, finally got planning permission last week. Now I came to see you about that when you were in control of this council, and that, thank God, was a while ago. But and long may it continue. But where we might diverge in our opinion is we've got to change the housing offer as well in the town centre. We've got to encourage aspiration. Got to encourage ambition. You know, we need people in the town centre who are going to stop in the town centre and instead of getting on the train to Birmingham, you know, or if you're in Bloxwich, getting on the train to Birmingham, or hopefully a few months' time, getting on the train in Willenhall and going to Birmingham, getting on the train, getting on the bus and coming into Walsall Town Centre and stopping, if you live in the town, stopping in the town and spending your money in the town centre. You know, you might work elsewhere. I mean, I've got a bit of a phrase that trying to create a Birmingham lifestyle on the wall. And that's where we are. So we've got to encourage the aspiration and miles of Lincoln in the town centre as well for people to spend and support these businesses that are going to magically appear when the town centre's been regenerated. Because if people haven't got the resources in which to spend, you aren't going to get those national change. Not going to get people to invest. So we need that real, in my personal view, we need that key balance like we do everywhere else.
Yeah, no, I'm not that far away from you on that. I mean, I do agree that we've got to get footfall in the town centre from people who live there and encourage them to spend it. But one of the things I got, and I guess you get as well still, is why don't you get people to come here by encouraging a big name chain or something? It's not that easy, is it? Rather embarrassingly, I had an upmarket burger chain saying we've took a lease out on the Crown Wharf, and then they decided through a corporate reorg that they'd pay for the lease, but they weren't going to fit the place out because they judged Walsall and they look at the figures for Walsall. They do studies on places before they move to them, and they just thought, well, the population just doesn't have enough money in its pocket to keep us going. And that's why places like M&S move out or other places don't come. It's great, actually, now that we've got a bowling alley coming. You've got to have that cultural capital to encourage the kinds of people you're talking about. So it's actually not a bad place. Let's kick around for a while. Let's go bowling. Let's do a bit of shopping. Let's have something to eat. People don't just shop to shop anymore. It's a day's event. It's going out. It's entertainment, and that's what Walsall has to become. I think we're pretty much on the same page there.
I think part of what I'm saying as well is, you know, if you do well in Walsall, stop here. You know, don't emigrate to Lichfield or Birmingham City Centre or whatever it is. Stop in. So if you do well, stop in Walsall. You've got to have that offer for people to stop here. And you know that, as you said, that is not going to change overnight. COVID really has stuffed it up a bit, to say the least. And we do need to get over that. But while we're trying to get over that, we are competing exactly with what you said with other towns of a similar size. Now we're not competing with Birmingham. Birmingham's not even there. But we've got to find our own. I hate this phrase, unique selling point that people come to. And I think we can do that. And you know, around the station quarter, in terms of the residential development that around there through the future high streets. that will be a game changer, and changing that entrance and welcome to get off the train will be a game changer.
Okay, I'm going to call Councillor Bott, and then we're going to move on to the next item. So I think we've done a lot of discussion.
Thanks, Chair. I think the biggest deterrent coming to Walsall Town Centre is parking fees. I can go to Bentley Bridge in Wolverhampton and park for nothing.
Okay. We have reduced parking fees in Walsall by 20% since 2019. But the problem we've got in Walsall is there's still a huge majority, despite buying the Sadler Centre car park, there's still a huge majority of it still in the hands of the private sector. So whenever we try and do anything about our parking charges or anything like that, the private sector ones don't engage. So it is something that we need to look at, but it's not council parking charges. I mean, our administration stopped the district centre parking charges, which were faster for the centres. But I do tend to think that if free parking panacea of all everywhere.
Yeah. You can shop on the Tower Walk. Cost you a fortune on that. Why should I go there and I'm going to Bentley Bridge?
It's owned by the private sector. Yeah.
Councillor Bird, have you hand up?
Yes, Madam Chairman, although it's not connected to the Towns Fund, we talk about parking. One of the biggest issues, and I've been tackling this over the last few weeks, is at Crown Wharf. Councillor Bott makes the point quite rightly, and my colleague Councillor Andrew, the majority of car parking is in the private sector. The machines at Crown Wharf, 11 of them, 5 of them weren't working. I went there myself. You can put £1 in for the time you're going to be there. It doesn't take cash. I've taken this up with the company. Most of the people in Walsall, or certainly the elder generation, they deal in cash. They don't deal by pay by phone. They don't deal by pay by card. And the one on the waterfront is Edinburgh Pension Fund. And, you know, quite genuinely, they are driving, those two particular car parks are driving people out of the town and instilling, no, we don't want to come back within their minds. So yes, we have to issue. The answer isn't free parking, I have to say, although I've said many times, the best shopping trolley's got a 2-litre engine. Back in the 1980s, pedestrianisation was the thing of the day. I have to say it isn't anymore. If you look at Bloxwich, the high street there is very busy because cars can penetrate that town centre, which of course they can't in Walsall. But the Towns Fund in general is excellent news for the town, and I sincerely hope that people will grasp it and actually embrace the fact that we are all hopefully on the same page and working together. It's no good criticising each other on this. We've got to have ideas that are pulled from elected members, from business, and indeed we ought to encourage people like entrepreneurs, like the old square has just been purchased by an individual company who are trying to populate also shops, as well as they purchased the St Modwyn development. And I think we should encourage them by trying to get as many people and as many ideas as possible into those shops that are different. And finally, town centre living is the title I have given to the Housing and Land Board in the Combined Authority. People should be encouraged to live in town centres. And as we said earlier, if they live in town centres and they spend their money in town centres, that's the lifeblood of survival.
Thank you. I suggest then that we ask for this report to be brought back again, as we've had such a good debate on it. But as we want to wait for further progress on it, I know progress is a little bit slow. Maybe if we put it on the agenda for the next municipal year. Agree with that? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that report. And we'll move on then to item 7, which is climate change. And we've got a presentation from Professor Gattran. Sorry for keeping you waiting so long, Professor. you'd like to make your presentation.
No problem at all. Could I possibly share the slides, please?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Right. Can you see me then? Yep. Can you see the slides?
Can see them.
Lovely. Chair, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for the council for giving me this opportunity to talk about something that I feel passionately about and something that I've been doing for a long time. You may know what's up, Word Against Single-Use Plastic, that I set up 4 or 5 years ago, and the council has thankfully been helping over the last couple of years. Today I'm going to talk about climate change and how it impacts basically on children, particularly around the world, because climate change is also a children's right issue. And as a pediatrician, and you know me that I'm a pediatrician as a consultant at the Manor Hospital, but I actually more recently have got a certificate in planetary health, and I'm also on the climate change committee of the Royal College of Pediatrics. I'm still learning, and I'm here just to share my knowledge, but not so much to talk to people how to suck eggs, if you see what I mean. So this is what's threatening us, fossil fuels. So the temperatures have gone up since the Industrial Revolution by over 1.2 degrees now, and various places are getting hotter and hotter. This is Germany this year, all because of the carbon dioxide, which actually is going up, up and up as the biggest culprit. And here the oceans are getting warmer, and the blue is where we want to be, 1.5 degrees or less in the next 10 or 15 years. If we carry on the way we are doing, we'll be hitting about 3 to 4 degrees by the end of the century. Now, just if you go from 1.2 to 1.5, there'll be 420 million more people that will be affected by climate change. And I'll briefly allude to all of these in a short time. And if it goes up to 2 degrees, which is just 0.7 degrees more, there'll be 1.7 billion people that will be affected by this. Now, by affected, I mean largely children, because children are the ones that feel the brunt of it. And as a pediatrician, I see a hell of a lot of them. And some of the diseases they are getting at the moment may well be related to the sort of things I'm going to talk to you about. So around the world, we are seeing all these pictures of floods and starvation and droughts. Even babies in utero are affected, and fires I'll allude to in a short while. So why do we talk about the children? Well, they're 20% of today's population, but they obviously form 100% of the adult population tomorrow. So tomorrow, they'll be talking about their children. 50% of the world's population is actually less than 30, which surprised me when I first came to know about this. The health burden of climate change is largely on children, and it's children below the age of 5. And even in the UK, 88% of the children globally are impacted. If you leave the developed worlds out, 99% of the global children below the age of 5 are affected. And yet those countries are contributing only 10% of the gases that are produced. Why are children vulnerable? Probably the biggest thing is they're going to be exposed with whatever we expose them to, because they don't have a say at the moment. So they're exposed the longest. They've got a different physiological system. As a pediatrician, I don't go too much into it, but one of them is, for example, a large surface area, particularly if they're not sweating very well and they haven't got a good immune system, then they have got a problem with some of the things I'm going to mention to you about shortly. I think as counsellors, you will know that we talk about transport. Here, children are on top of the bus. You would never see it in Warsaw, but around the world, this is what happens. Trade deals affect children's food. Urban planning, which I'm sure council has been involved with, which involve children playing outside, improves their mental health. And we were talking about canals a short time ago. Environment, I'll allude to shortly. Family services, a lot of children traveling away, migrating away from fires or whatever, are impacted by abuse by travelers with them. Housing, this is what they have got. And with climate change, they've got nothing. Education is impacted seriously. So all these things are going on already, but the threat is now more and more from total planetary health destruction. And systems such as water, electricity, we already know that in Northumberland, for example, electricity took ages to come back. So what's this planetary health all about? Well, you already know, I'm sure some of you, that Anthropocene is the geological era that we are going through. And it's an era where energy is really the culprit in whatever is happening, leading to huge global changes, and due to also expansion of agriculture, expansion of population, and industrialization. So basically, it's planetary health is the impact that we as humans have caused on animals and us by our own disruption of nature's systems, basically natural resources, which is water, soil, and air. So we have now crossed a lot of boundaries. These are the safe boundaries. And there are 9 planetary health boundaries. I'm just going to talk to you about climate change today largely, but deforestation is equally important because deforestation affects bees, frogs. So bees are important in pollination. Frogs, types of frogs are important in getting rid of mosquitoes. Deforestation affects soil, it worsens erosion, also decreases carbon capture. Freshwater is another sector which we have not yet crossed, but we will be crossing soon. So particularly in areas such as Peru, which has got the largest number of glaciers, these are melting, affecting fresh water to the places such as in Lima. What we use in our gardens, in our agriculture, is affecting the soil quality and impacting on increased phosphorus and nitrogen. Carbon dioxide in oceans is affecting acidity there. Fish are dying. Every day, 2 billion people survive on fish. Every day, corals are dying. Corals protect fish from predators, and they also help them breed. Corals dying affects coastal protection. We as pediatricians have to know that asthma devices and even people such as anesthetists need to know that the gases are affecting the greenhouse gases. Plastics is something I could talk to you about till the cows come home, but plastics actually contribute 4% to greenhouse gases. Just to recap, and I apologize for this, greenhouse gases are very important to keep our planet warm, because if they weren't there, then we would be minus 20 degrees. But we got too much of greenhouse gases. Here we've got radiant heat hitting our Earth, reflected back as infrared, and is coming back, warming our planet. As I said to you, the culprit is carbon dioxide, but 10% is methane, but that is 40 to 80 times more powerful than is carbon dioxide. Then there's nitrous oxide coming from industry and also from cars. Energy largely from industry, from transportation, electricity, and also carbon from agriculture. All of these contribute to these gases. Coming back to the medical side of things, this is the impact that we're going to have on the medical side of things, the weather events affecting directly, injuring patients that get into hospital. Mental health being seriously affected, a condition called solastalgia. Heat stress, I'll come to that, show you a diagram. Air quality, I'll show you a diagram. Water, floods. 39 countries around the world have got cholera that's endemic. Food supply being affected by contamination with salmonella, for example, through floods, etc. Vectors are now seen in areas such as Southwest USA, where they never were, creating dengue fever, malaria. Social factors as a result of migration, conflict, because there's less food or whatever is going to be made worse. So just coming back to a couple of things that I've mentioned about, direct impact of heat and also indirect effect on air pollution of the climate change. As far as heat is concerned, as a pediatrician, I know that when people get very hot, that is what happens. They can faint, they have muscle cramps. But if they have a heat stroke, then they can't actually bring the temperature down. If they can't do so, and the temperature remains at 104, then they have organ failure and they actually die. This, I'm sure, will interest a lot of councillors. This is indoor pollution, but in the UK, it's mostly outdoor pollution. And pollution is not only from the gases, but also from particulate matter, which is 2.5, 0.1, and 10 microns. That particulate matter that's less than 2.5 gets into our bloodstream, and it affects every organ in our body. Just examples are affects the mother, affects the baby, leading to prematurity, low birth weight, infant mortality. Children, their lungs are affected, particularly near motorways or whatever. Not only have they got asthma, but the lungs stop growing. It affects them mentally. Not only do people have asthma, but strokes, cancer, all as a result of particulate matter and gases that we breathe in because they go through into our system. Now, in future, more and more diabetic patients will be diagnosed, and also there'll be more dementia as a result of the brain being affected. I brought this slide perhaps just for the councillors. I apologize if you guys already know about this. There are 5 components that we talk about: sulfur dioxide, ozone, nitrous dioxide, and the 2 particulate matters here. This is just one index that I'm showing you of PM 2.5. Anything less than that gets into our lungs. And at the moment, WHO is saying that we should have 35 micrograms per cubic meter in the average 24 hours. But from 2022, hopefully it'll be 15 micrograms is WHO edict. We are working at the moment on 25 micrograms, which roughly comes to level 3 here on the particulate matter 2.5. WHO is saying we should go down to should go down to 5. I think we'll probably go down to 25, which is level 2 rather than level 3. So roughly what can we do? That's important. Obviously, governments, corporates, individuals all have a role to play. Cars idling outside schools. I think the council should address that. Streets, I think it was Councillor Bott, I think, who mentioned about schools. And also, I think Councillor Bird mentioned about pedestrianisation. That I think is seriously important. Switching off car ventilation when in traffic queues helps improve your health if you're sitting in the car whilst in a queue. And a mother or father crossing the road behind a car that's on exposes babies to the exhaust fumes. So these are some personal measures which I'm sure you know about: decreased flying, hybrid cars we've talked about today in the council. Growing more trees is very important in green spaces. Decreasing clothes. I know Primark has been brought in, but decreasing clothes, because 15% of the global greenhouse gases are produced by the fashion industry, and 1.5 trillion liters of fresh water is used up every year around the world. Vegetarian diet. I'm trying to get the hospital to introduce more vegetarian diets. In China, 75,000 deaths occurred purely and simply from people eating meat. This was just in 2021. Just to contextualize, 1 beef burger a week for a year is equivalent to a return trip from London to Spain. So beef is a culprit, less so with the other foods. Other important thing I think that the council could look at is food wastage. Globally, 20% of food that we produce is actually wasted. In the homes, 70%, home food all around the world contributes to 70% of the 20% that is being wasted. If we did all that I've mentioned, then there'd be less heart disease, less lung disease, less cancer, etc. And we also mentioned earlier in the council meeting that we talked about canals. I'm happy to take questions on that because we do social prescribing. A lot of companies do actually join us, and we're hoping that some of the CCGs will. So climate change, in summary, is it's real. It's us that's caused it. Scientists agree it is catastrophic, but there is hope if we have clean, renewable energy and also reforestation. Because I talked about threats, but the ultimate threat is going to be the melting snow, particularly in the Arctic and the Antarctic. The snow reflects radiant heat back into the atmosphere. If the snow melts, that albedo effect has gone, and you've got exposed permafrost, which is iced earth. If that melts, then I think it's Armageddon, because hydrocarbons will be released, which have been there for millions of years. And it is said that some diseases like smallpox may actually be trapped there. So if it is a future of our children we are thinking of, then seriously, I think we need to do all the bits that I've mentioned to not only improve the present generation of children, but also the generations to come. Because there still is some ink in the pen to change the ending in this volatile and uncertain world, which is inequitable because it's the children, it's the women, it's the pregnant women particularly, and the elderly that are impacted. So the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything, said this great man. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I will take questions if you would like to ask me any. I hope I've kept to time.
Thank you very much for the presentation, very solid presentation. Councillor Parr, your question?
Yeah, I just want to talk about steps that the council is taking in relation to tree planting. So we have already made a start in relation to that. What are the forward plans for those? If you could answer that, please.
Sorry, what was the question?
What are the future plans to plant further trees in comparison to what we've already done so far?
Well, I think one of the things that one can do, and we were talking about canals, is actually to not only improve the experience of going to canals and improving mental health. In fact, medically, it's been shown just by going to canals or into green spaces, it decreases your blood pressure. It also decreases your pulse rate. So I think planting across around all the canals and getting them tarmacked, which is what Dick said earlier on, Dick Worrell, would be a help. But planting fruit trees or whatever along the canals would also be, I think, an improvement.
It's more around what the council has already done so far and what they're going to be doing. I think Councillor Oliver Butler might be able to answer this one.
Councillor Butler's got his hand up. It might be something that he can help with. Speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have got a tree planting plan in place. I know Councillor Bott always asks this question about how can Solihull plant this many trees. I've actually had a meeting with Solihull and got details of our plans. We've got a number of schemes in train. I know Councillor Bott was out last week in Darlaston planting one of our tiny forests. We've also got the West Midlands Combined Authority canopy and the Queen's Green canopy. I can't confirm the exact numbers yet because we're not quite there, but what I can say is there's going to be a substantial number of trees planted, much more significant than anything we've done before and potentially overtaking Solihull. So watch this space is the answer on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think that's also something that will be covered under the next item as well.
Thank you.
Could I just ask, if I could get a chance to ask Councillor Butler, please? And that is that I would love to work with him on this issue because a lot of people ask me about tree planting. So if I was to connect with Councillor Butler, that would be great, and we could work together. 2 + 2 makes 22.
Yes, certainly happy to do that. Drop me an email and I can put you in connection with the right people in Clean and Green to speak to on that matter. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much again for having me. Thank you, Chair.
I've got a question here.
Hey, Councillor Bott.
Before you go, Professor Catcher, what's the benefit of a tree? Is it the trunk or the leaf?
It's both in a sense, the leaf largely to take away the carbon dioxide because that's where photosynthesis takes place. But when you got the trunk and the roots in the actual soil, lots of other things happen whereby it stops soil erosion. Okay, so stops soil erosion. So if the soil is less eroded, it carbon captures. But generally speaking, trees themselves, if you look at them, they also support biodiversity. They also give us some shade. And in some places, some countries, they also give them food. So trees are hugely important. And along the coastal side, trees also prevent from coastal flooding. So they play a huge part. So growing trees, growing forests is very, very important. So photosynthesis from the leaves, yes, which is what takes away the carbon dioxide.
Councillor Worrell, question?
Yes. Professor Gatrad, I thought that was hugely impressive and well researched. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I wondered if members could get a copy of that presentation.
Absolutely. And I've already sent it to Craig, and Craig's got it, so he can distribute it. And I've also sent him, I think, my recorded version, which is almost the same as what I've given you now. So I thought, in case for any reason I was not able to do it, then it could be recorded and I could be there, not in person. But fortunately, I was well enough to actually do it, which is great.
Okay, thank you. I'll make sure those are sent round to all the committee. Any more questions? Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll move on to item 8, which is Climate Emergency Action Plan. On which report? Yeah, we're going to do so. We've got we're going to have a presentation on it first, I believe. Alan, yeah.
There's no presentation, sorry, Chair. No, I was just going to introduce the report, if that's okay.
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee. My name's Alan Bowley. I am the head of Clean, Green and Leisure, and I'm leading the council's response on climate change. The reason I'm here tonight is to introduce the report that's before you. It is a report that brings together our kind of 1-year update on the action plan that the council adopted back in 2020, October 2020, when they declared, when the council declared its climate emergency. So the action plan before you was developed as part of a response to that. In terms of the report in front of scrutiny, this is an updated report that initially went to Cabinet in October 2021 that represented our first annual update. The action plan is appended to the report and covers the 5 key themes that feature in the action plan. Couple of things to note: the focus of the action plan is very much on the council's emissions and those areas where we have direct and indirect control. So it has a narrower focus than some of the issues we've just heard in the previous presentation. And as a response to implementing the action plan, we now have set up and are meeting regularly a core officer group that represent the kind of key project holders that are delivering the improvements in the action plan. And I'm pleased to confirm that Councillor Hicken is chairing and regularly attending that to provide links into the political side of things. So I'm happy to take questions, Chair. It is a very comprehensive action plan. It covers virtually every area of the work of the council. So I'll do my best to answer questions where I'm technically responsible for, but there might be areas where I'd need to come back and bring responses if it's not an area that I'm directly managing, if that's okay, committee.
Okay, I suggest that we do take questions, but as they've said, some of the answers might have to come back in writing. Okay, Councillor Watt?
Right, my question is to Councillor Chow first. See on the screen, Councillor Chow. Councillor Chow.
Sorry, Councillor Bott, I just popped to the loo. Yes.
You hear me, Bruce?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We've just had a report of Professor Gatchard about children. Do you believe the children ought to be involved with this tiny forest planting? Schools should be involved.
That's a very good point. I'm not sure if the schools have been involved in the tree planting. It's very important, as Councillor Gatrad said, children are going to be affected by what we do now considerably. If we don't get this right, then our children's lives are in peril in future. I was at tree planting like you did at Barbeacon. There weren't any schools there. It's a very good point, Councillor Bott. I'm not sure, perhaps Councillor Butler can tell us if schools have been involved. I'm not sure if I can answer that question. Maybe I should be able to, but I can't. But I will pick it up as an issue tomorrow morning, Councillor Bott, with the Director of Education in Walsall.
I can pick up that issue. The tree planting had been...
Speaking to Councillor Tarr. Now, there's another question, Councillor Tarr.
Okay, sorry, my fault. I asked if Councillor Butler could answer it. My apologies, Councillor Butler. Yes, carry on.
Councillor Butler, you can answer that question if you want, and then we can come back to Councillor Watt to ask.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question. The Tiny Forest project was embargoed by Severn Trent in terms of the publicity, so we knew that it was taking place, but we were not able to release that information because they wouldn't allow us to. I fully support involving children, and as you know, the sites are being set as outdoor classrooms, so children can then come and see how these tiny forests develop. But in terms of the initial planting, we were not allowed to do that because of Severn Trent. I would be happy to get schools along to any planting that we do on projects that we do ourselves and are totally council-led. Thank you.
Can I just come back to you? That's a disappointing answer, that is. If Councillor Tow is going to contact the schools and get the kids involved, it's their future.
Absolutely.
Not our future. We've polluted it. These kids have got to clean it. So I hope Councillor Tow contacts every school or the Director of Education that these kids are involved with this tree planting. I ain't bothered about Severn Trent. They're our parks, not Severn Trents. So I thank Chris Tow for what he's just said. I want to move now to the report. It's got tiny forest planting. I've just asked Professor Gatra, what's the benefit of a tree, the trunk and the leaf? Right, you haven't planted 600 trees. You've planted 600 whips. That's all you've planted. The difference between a mature tree is 150 quid to a whip, which is 2 quid. Now, the benefit of a whip is going to be 10, 15 years' time. A mature tree that they've just planted in George House Park will probably be in leaf in 2 years' time, benefit the climate change issue. So these 600 trees, this report, are whips, not trees. Can you answer that?
Yes, I can. It's 5,400 whips because there were 9 sites, and they only form a small part of a tree planting scheme that we have. They're going to be standard heavies going in across the borough, and there are acres potentially planned up, which will have bigger trees. So this is just the beginning of it. This isn't the entire thing. This is just the start.
Can I come back to Councillor Butler and the officer as well? If this tree planting took place in Kings Hill Park, wouldn't it be nice to put something on a notice board that a tiny tree forest was being planted in Kings Hill Park? So to let the general public and the friends of Kings Hill Park why you was planting in that park.
I don't know if you can pick that up, Alan, in terms of publicity within Clean and Green. I've obviously mentioned about the Severn Trent issue. Councillor Bott doesn't like that answer, but that's where we were with regard to the funding and the preparation of a site.
Well, I'd just confirm the answer around the embargo with the Severn Trent issue has been dealt with. And as Councillor Butler has already confirmed, this will be a long-term strategy of tree planting. It's not a one-off. It's something that we will be building into our ongoing investment plans. We will be searching and researching funding from a range of sources. We will be needing to look to work with partners, because to get the kind of tree canopy that we need going forward, we will have to work with private landowner as well as public land. We don't have enough space in Walsall, just in our own council ownership to meet the demands. And there will be lots of other opportunities for publicity around the good works that need to happen. So that is something that we're very conscious of and will be working forward, going forward on.
Can I just come back to the comment? Surely the elected members ought to be the first people that are told where they're planting in their wards.
Yes, we should improve how we communicate with ward councillors when we're doing these projects going forward.
Nobody's answered the question about notice boards, telling people what's being done.
In future, going forward, we can make sure publicity is presented in the right way, in the right form. Notice boards can be part of that, but it's not the only way to make sure local communities know what's happening in their area.
Can somebody tell people on YouTube what it means by carbon offset?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Carbon offset.
Can somebody answer the question what it means in the report, carbon offsetting?
Carbon offsetting is where we take actions where we can't reduce to do things like tree planting, where there is in effect a positive impact on climate change.
Simon, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the apologies. I just wanted to address the previous point around division between those things that we are responsible for as a council for tree planting and the Severn Trent matter, which has been raised by Councillor Allen this evening. That is a privately funded arrangement linked with the Commonwealth Games, which is why the embargo was in place. Of course, we will give every commitment to members on this committee and all 58 members that we will ensure that appropriate notice boards, social media, ward member engagement will happen for any future planting that is directly in the control of the council. Got my personal commitment that that will happen, but that was not in the direct control of the council. We were a partner in that project, so I just wanted to clarify that distinction for all members, so you don't think that we've done something that was inappropriate. It was a partnership which was with a private sector partner, and we took advantage of the opportunity of securing external funding alongside this plan.
Can I just come back on that, Chair? I was gobsmacked. I'm chairman of that park. I was not notified that Severn Trent was planting trees. When I got on site to plant trees, I thought it would be a community-led project, not Severn Trent.
I think officers have assured you that things will be in place in future for that not to happen. Any other questions or comments?
You, Chair, you've been chairman of the park. Everything that I've said, you should be in agreement. I think you are.
Any other questions or comments? Okay then, thank you very much for that report. And we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is areas of focus.
It's about waste going to landfill. Can somebody give me a percentage what was recycled in Darlaston South in the last 12 months? Or is there a league table of every ward? What percentage? Look, can we have a copy?
Am I saying that there is some kind of table? Councillor Butler, can you answer that?
I can certainly ask my officers to go away and look up the information to you and see what might be provided regard to that information.
That's the percentage of everything that's recycled in Darlaston South.
Yeah, we note that action and we will go away and see what information we've got.
I'll leave that into Councillor Butler's hands. Okay. Okay, so no further questions. So we'll move on to areas of focus. So for our next meeting, we've got Phoenix 10, which I believe should be another good report like we've had this evening. Willinghall Master Plan and bonfires. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Okay, you note those? And you've been, the Willinghall Master Plan will be coming to our next agenda, our next meeting. You can, whether I can answer it is another thing, but.
Somebody might be. Can you give me an update on the COVID Memorial Garden?
Simon.
Thank you. The Memorial Garden is scheduled for Cabinet report in March, and I believe Overview Scrutiny Committee is looking at it at its next agenda early February.
We've been distributed with a forward plan. We note the forward plan. Any comments on that? Okay then, so all that's left to say is our next meeting is on the 3rd of March. I'd like to thank you for a really good debate on this meeting. It's been okay. Oh, carry on.
Ultra rapid charging spine is West Midlands. What it is?
Sorry, Councillor, can you?
Yeah, it's the West Midland report from the West Midland Combined Authority. Ultra rapid charging spine. What is it?
I don't know what the spine refers to specifically, but there is some regional work on a network of ultra-fast electric vehicle charging points around the region. And that is part of a regional plan, which then at a Black Country level, we have plans in each of our boroughs to ensure that we have sufficient coverage and as much external funding can support electric vehicle points. A piece of, I'm not sure what the spine refers to. I can put that up and that committee member.
Just one more question, Chair. Mobility hubs, what are those?
I'm not sure on mobility hubs. I'll follow that up.
Okay, before I close the meeting, is there any more questions or comments? No. Okay then, thank you very much for your attendance. And again, thank you for a very good debate earlier on. And I'll see you on the 3rd of March. Thank you.